The docking bay of Galactic Citadel Station hummed with activity as ships from 100 worlds unloaded their passengers. Lieutenant Hana Kim stepped off the Earth transport, her boots clanging against the metal floor. She wore her combat armor, the same suit she had worn for 3 years. The metal was scarred and dented. Burn marks streaked across the chest plate. Welded patches covered holes that had once been fatal breaches. It was not pretty, but it worked. Around her, warriors from across the galaxy gathered for the annual Warriors Summit. This was where the greatest military minds met to share knowledge and form alliances. Hannah looked small compared to the others. The Vralfie towered over everyone, their reptilian bodies covered in gleaming energy shields that shimmered like water. The Kel moved in groups, their insect-like bodies enhanced with biomechanical implants that whirred and clicked. The Nyx floated past, their bodies surrounded by fields of distorted gravity. Hana walked through the crowd with Ambassador Teeman Park at her side. Teeman wore formal diplomatic robes and carried a data tablet. He looked nervous. Earth had only joined the Galactic Union 5 years ago, and humanity was still seen as newcomers. Primitive newcomers. A Vralfie warrior stepped into their path. He was massive, easily 3 meters tall, with scales that gleamed like polished emeralds. Energy shields crackled around his armor. He looked down at Hana and made a sound that her translator interpreted as laughter. "This is Earth's warrior?" The Vralfie said. His voice boomed through the corridor. Other aliens stopped to watch. "They send a child in scrap metal?" More laughter echoed around them. A group of Kel clicked their mandibles in what Hana recognized as mockery. One of them pointed at her rifle with a clawed limb. "They still use kinetic weapons," the Kel said. "Projectiles. Like throwing rocks." Teeman stepped forward, his face flushed. "Lieutenant Kim is a decorated soldier. She has seen more combat than the Vralfie warrior cut him off with a wave of his massive hand. "Combat? Against what? Other humans?" He leaned down, his yellow eyes studying Hana's armor. "Your metal is broken. Your weapons are ancient. Does Earth have nothing better to send?" Hannah said nothing. She stood perfectly still, her face hidden behind her helmet's visor. Her posture was relaxed, but ready. Years of training had taught her when to speak and when to let others talk themselves into mistakes. The Vralfie straightened up and addressed the growing crowd. "I am Commander Vash of the Vralfie Star Guard. I have fought in 30 campaigns across 12 systems." He gestured at Hana dismissively. "And Earth sends this to represent their military might?" A Nyx floated closer, its translated voice cold and analytical. "Humans have never been tested in real galactic warfare. They have only fought among themselves. Primitive conflicts with primitive weapons." Teenan's hands clenched into fists. Hana reached out and placed a gaunted hand on his shoulder. Through her suit's speakers, her voice came out calm and measured. "Let them talk," she said quietly, meant only for Teeman, but Vash heard. He laughed again, and this time others joined him. The sound filled the corridor like thunder. "She does not even defend herself," Vash announced. "Perhaps Earth's warriors are mute as well as weak." The crowd pressed closer. Hana could see warriors from a dozen species, all looking at her with expressions, ranging from amusement to contempt. Some took pictures with their various recording devices. Others made comments in languages her translator could not process, but the tone was clear enough. Vash's energy shields flared brighter as he drew himself up to his full height. "I challenge Earth's right to attend this summit," he declared. The laughter died away. A challenge at the summit was serious business. Let their warrior demonstrate their worthiness in the combat arena tomorrow. If she cannot prove that humanity deserves to stand among warriors, then Earth should withdraw their petition for military alliance status, the crowd murmured. Everyone knew what was at stake. Earth needed military allies. The Drath Empire was expanding through the outer systems, consuming colony worlds. Without allies, Earth's colonies would be next. This summit was humanity's best chance to form defensive pacts with established powers. Timon's face went pale. Commander Vosh, surely we can resolve this through. I accept, Hana said. The corridor went quiet. All eyes turned to her. She stood motionless in her battered armor, facing the massive Vralthi commander. Tomorrow, Hana continued, combat arena. I will demonstrate. Vosh's lips pulled back, showing rows of sharp teeth. Excellent. I look forward to seeing what Earth considers a warrior. He turned to crowd. Tomorrow, we will all see how long their scrap metal lasts against real military technology. The crowd began to disperse, most of them already discussing bets on how quickly the fight would end. 30 seconds was the popular prediction. Some generous souls gave her a full minute. Timon grabbed Hana's arm as they walked away. What were you thinking? Vosh is a champion. He has decades of combat experience and military-grade equipment. Your armor is functional, Hana interrupted. She kept walking toward their assigned quarters. That is all that matters. This is not about pride, Timon hissed, lowering his voice as they entered a lift. If you lose tomorrow, Earth loses everything. The alliance talks will collapse. The colonies will be defenseless. Hana finally looked at him. Through her visor, her eyes were calm. I know what is at stake. Then why did you accept? Because refusing would have the same result, Hana said. Either I fight and have a chance, or I refuse and prove them right about humanity being weak. The lift carried them upward through the station. Through the transparent walls, Hana could see the vast expanse of the docking maze below. Ships from countless worlds sat in neat rows. Each one represented a civilization that had earned its place in the galaxy. Earth was still proving itself. When they reached her quarters, Timon stood in the doorway, uncertain. I need to report to the diplomatic corps. They need to know what happened. Tell them I will win tomorrow, Hana said. How can you be sure? Hana was already removing her helmet. For the first time, Timon saw her face clearly. She was young, maybe 25 standard years. But her eyes were older, much older, and across her face ran scars, burns, cuts, tissue regeneration marks from weapons Timon did not recognize. Because I have already survived worse than Commander Vosh, Hana said quietly. Much worse. She closed the door, leaving Timon alone in the corridor. He stood there for a long moment, staring at the closed door, wondering what battles had put those scars on such a young face. Inside her quarters, Hana began removing her armor piece by piece. Each component came off with practiced efficiency. She laid them out on the floor in order. Chest plate, arm guards, leg sections, helmet. The armor was old, but well maintained. Every surface told a story. Plasma burns, kinetic impacts, acid scoring, claw marks from things that should not exist. Hana sat on the floor and began her maintenance routine. She checked seals, tested servos, cleaned joints. Her hands moved automatically, while her mind drifted to another place. Another battle. A planet called GYEONGSAN-7. Tomorrow, the galaxy would see what humanity could do. Tomorrow, they would learn that the scars on her armor were not signs of weakness. They were proof of survival. And in the end, survival was all that mattered. The night cycle on Galactic Citadel Station dimmed the lights to simulate darkness. In her small quarters, Hana worked on her armor under a single bright lamp. Each piece lay spread across the floor like parts of a puzzle. She picked up the chest plate and examined a deep gouge that ran across the left side. Her fingers traced the mark slowly. She remembered when that gouge happened. Gyeongsan 7, Day 3. A Drath combat form had gotten too close. Its claws were like heated knives. They had cut through the outer layer of her armor before she put her sidearm against its head and fired. The memory was clear and sharp. Too sharp. Hannah shook her head and focused on the maintenance. She applied sealant to micro cracks. She tested the servo motors in the arm joints. Everything had to work perfectly tomorrow. Not for pride, not for glory, for survival, and for Earth. A knock on her door interrupted her work. She checked the time display on her wrist computer. Late, past midnight by station time. She stood and opened the door. TAEM. IN stood outside, looking tired. He held 2 cups of something hot. "I brought tea," he said. "Earth tea. Real leaves, not synthesized." Hannah stepped aside to let him enter. Teeman looked at the armor pieces spread across the floor and whistled softly. "I have never seen combat armor this damaged still in use," he said, sitting carefully on the edge of her bunk. He handed her one of the cups. Hannah took the tea and sat on the floor next to her armor. The tea smelled like home, like Earth. She took a sip and let the warmth spread through her chest. "It is still functional," she said. "That is what matters." Teeman watched her work for a moment. "I spoke with the diplomatic corps. They are worried. Commander Vosh is not just a soldier. He is a champion. He has won 43 arena matches without a single loss." "I know," Hannah said calmly. She picked up her helmet and began checking the heads-up display systems. "The political situation is worse than I told you," Teeman continued. His voice was heavy with worry. "Earth needs this alien. CE. The Drath Empire has already destroyed 3 of our outer colonies. Myeongjin Station went silent last week. We got 1 transmission before they cut off communications. Just screaming. Then nothing." Hannah's hand stopped moving. Myeongjin Station. She had friends there. Had friends there. Past tense now. "If we do not secure military allies at this summit," Teeman went on, "Earth's colony worlds will fall within a year. Maybe less. The Drath are moving faster than our intelligence predicted." "Then I will not lose tomorrow," Hannah said simply. Teeman set down his cup. "How can you be so calm? You are about to fight an alien warrior who outweighs you by 100 kilograms, has energy shields that can stop bullets, and carries weapons that can cut through steel. And you," he gestured at her armor, "you have scrap metal and a rifle." Hannah looked up at him. In the dim light, her scars were more visible. Burns across her left cheek. A line along her jaw from a blade. Tissue regeneration marks on her neck where acid had eaten through her armor on Gyeongsan 7. "I need to tell you something," Hannah said quietly. "But it is classified. Very classified." Teeman leaned forward. "I have diplomatic clearance. Level 9. This is level 13, Hannah said. She was quiet for a moment, then continued. "My file. You said it was heavily redacted. What does it say?" "That you served in the 7th Colonial Marines. That you saw action on Gyeongsan 7. That you received multiple medals and a medical discharge. Most of the details are blacked out." Hannah nodded slowly. Gyeongsan 7. Colony world. Population was 340,000. Humans mostly. Some allied aliens who liked our culture. It was a good place. Safe. Peaceful. She paused to take another sip of tea. Her hands were steady, but her eyes looked far away. "Then the Drath came," she continued. "Not their main fleet. Just a vanguard. But it was enough. They breached our orbital defenses in 3 hours. Landed ground forces across the planet. Their combat forms were..." She stopped, searching for words. "They were nightmares. Fast, adaptable, They did not stop unless you destroyed them completely. Timin listened in silence. He had heard stories about the Drath, but Earth's military kept details classified. Too horrifying for civilians. The colonial government ordered an evacuation, Hannah said. We had 6 days before the main draft fleet would arrive. 6 days to get everyone off-world. My unit, the 7th Colonial Marines, we were assigned to hold the main starport. 200 soldiers. Our job was simple. Hold the evacuation zones until every civilian was on a ship. And you held for 6 days, Timin said. We held, Hannah confirmed. Her voice was flat now, emotionless. It was the only way she could tell the story. Day 1 we had 50 casualties. Day 2, 40 more. The Drath kept learning. They adapted to our tactics. By day 4, we had 60 soldiers left. Day 5, 20. She stopped talking and picked up her chest plate again. Her fingers found the burn marks, the dents, the places where the armor had been breached and repaired and breached again. Day 6, there were 4 of us left, Hannah said softly. Myself, Private Minji Cho, Sergeant Dong Yoon Lee, and Corporal Subin Kwan. We held the final loading ramp. The last evacuation ship. 3,000 civilians. Children, families, elderly people who could not move fast. We held that ramp. Timin found his voice. What happened? Minji fell first. A Drath spitter got her. Acid through the chest plate. Dong Yoon went next, swarmed by combat forms. Subin lasted until the ship started lifting off. Then a Drath flyer took her. Just grabbed her and pulled her off the ramp. Hannah set down the chest plate and looked at Timin directly. I was alone for the last 2 minutes. The ship was lifting off. I was hanging onto the ramp. Drath combat forms were climbing up after me. I had no ammunition left. Just my combat knife and my fists. How did you survive? I kept fighting, Hannah said. Because if I fell, the Drath would swarm the ship. They would breach it. 3,000 people would die. So I held on. I cut. I punched. I kicked. I used my teeth when I had to. And I did not let go. The room was very quiet. Somewhere in the station, a ventilation system hummed. Outside the window, stars shone cold and distant. The ship made it to orbit, Hannah finished. I blacked out. Woke up 6 days later in a hospital ship. They told me I was the only survivor from the 7th Colonial Marines. They also told me that all 340,000 civilians made it off Juongsen 7. Every single one. Timin realized his hands were shaking. He set down his teacup before he spilled it. That is why you are not afraid of Vosh. I am afraid, Hannah corrected him. I am always afraid. Fear keeps you alert, keeps you alive. But I have learned that fear does not have to stop you. You can be afraid, can still move forward, still fight. She stood and began reassembling her armor. Piece by piece, the battered suit came back together. Tomorrow, Vosh will try to intimidate me. He will use his size, his technology, his reputation. And none of it will work. Because I have already faced worse than him. I have faced death and decided to keep fighting anyway. Timin stood as well. What do you need from me? Just be there, Hannah said. Watch. And when this is over, when Earth has its alliance, remember the 7th Colonial Marines. Remember Minji, Dong-Yoon, and Subin. They deserve to be remembered. I will, Timin promised. He moved toward the door, then paused. One more question. Why did you accept Vosh's challenge so quickly? You could have negotiated, asked for different terms. Hannah smiled, and for the first time, Timin saw something fierce in that expression. Something predatory. Because Vosh made a mistake, she said. He looked at my armor and saw weakness. He should have looked at my scars and known I survived something. Tomorrow, I will teach him the difference between looking strong and being strong. Teeman left her alone then. Hannah finished assembling her armor and ran diagnostics. Everything checked out. Green lights across the board. She lay down on her bunk, still wearing her undersuit, and closed her eyes. Tomorrow would come soon enough. And when it did, the galaxy would learn something new about humanity. The combat arena filled with spectators from across the galaxy. Thousands of beings packed into the viewing sections, their various forms of communication creating a noise that sounded like thunder. Holographic displays floated above the arena floor, ready to broadcast every moment to watching worlds. This was entertainment for most of them. A chance to see the new species humiliated. Hannah stood in the preparation chamber, checking her armor one final time. The rifle maglock to her back held 60 rounds. Her sidearm had 2 extra magazines. Her combat knife sat in its sheath on her chest plate. Standard loadout. Nothing special. Just what had kept her alive on Gyeongsan 7. A station official entered the chamber. He was a Nyx, floating in his gravity field, his translated voice neutral. The arena will simulate a hostile environment. Urban ruins. Collapsed buildings, rubble, limited visibility. Do you accept these conditions? I accept, Hannah said. Urban combat. Good. She had trained for that. Lived through it. The ruins on Gyeongsan 7 had looked similar after the Droth bombardment. If you surrender or become incapacitated, the match ends. Non-lethal protocols are in effect. Your weapons will be monitored. The Nyx paused. Commander Vosh has won 43 consecutive matches. This will be his 44th. Do you wish to withdraw? No, Hannah said simply. The Nyx floated away without another word. The door to the arena floor opened with a hiss of hydraulics. Light flooded in, bright and harsh. Hannah walked forward into the noise. The crowd erupted with jeers and laughter when they saw her. Her armor looked even worse under the bright arena lights. Every scar, every dent, every welded patch was visible. She heard the translated voices calling her weak, calling humanity primitive, making jokes about how quickly this would end. Hannah ignored them all. She walked to her starting position and surveyed the arena. The holographic system had created a convincing simulation of a destroyed city. Collapsed buildings leaned at dangerous angles. Rubble piled everywhere, creating cover and obstacles. Smoke drifted through the air. It looked like a dozen battlefields she had fought on. The opposite door opened, and Commander Vosh entered. The crowd's jeers turned to cheers. Vosh stood 3 meters tall, his green scales gleaming under energy shields that crackled with power. He carried a plasma lance, its tip glowing with barely contained energy. His armor was pristine, modern, expensive. He looked like a warrior from recruitment posters. Vosh raised his lance to the crowd, and they roared approval. Then he turned to face Hannah across the arena floor. Even at a distance, she could see his yellow eyes fixed on her. Predatory, confident. An announcer's voice boomed through the arena in a dozen languages simultaneously. Champions, take your positions. Combat begins in 30 seconds. Hannah checked her rifle one more time. 60 rounds. She would make them count. Her heart rate was steady. Breathing normal. Fear was there, as always, but controlled. She had learned to use fear instead of letting it use her. 10 seconds. Vosh dropped into a combat stance, his shields flaring brighter. 5 seconds. Hannah remained still, analyzing. Vosh was strong and fast, but his size would work against him in tight spaces. The energy shields were impressive, but had to have limits. Everything had limits. Begin. Vosh charged immediately. His massive legs covered ground impossibly fast for something his size. The plasma lance came up, aimed at Hana's center mass. He intended to end this quickly. Show the crowd that humans were no match for real warriors. Hana moved laterally, diving behind a pile of rubble. The plasma lance fired, superheated energy turning concrete into molten slag where she had stood. The crowd cheered. Vash pressed forward, confident and aggressive. Good, Hana thought. Confidence makes you predictable. She came around the rubble at a different angle, rifle up. She fired 3 controlled bursts at Vash. The kinetic rounds hit his energy shields and deflected, exactly as expected. But she was not trying to hurt him yet. She was learning. Each shot told her something about his shields, how they absorbed impacts, where they were strongest, where they might be weak. Vash fired again, plasma bolts that could vaporize unprotected flesh. One caught Hana's shoulder plate. The armor absorbed most of the energy, but heated instantly. She felt the burn through her undersuit. The crowd cheered louder. Hana kept moving, using rubble for cover, never staying in one place. She fired again, aiming for different points on Vash's shields. Testing, learning. The shields flickered slightly near the joints. There. That was the weakness. Stand still, human. Vash roared. He sounded frustrated. The quick victory he expected was not happening. The prey was refusing to cooperate. Hana said nothing. Words were wasted energy. She vaulted over a collapsed wall and ran through a narrow gap between buildings. Vash followed, his bulk smashing through obstacles she had slipped around. The gap slowed him down. Size was becoming a disadvantage. She led him deeper into the ruins. Tighter spaces. More obstacles. Places where his shields would not matter as much, because he would have to move carefully. The crowd's cheering became confused. This was not the quick execution they had expected. Hana reached a collapsed building and climbed quickly to higher ground. Vash emerged below, scanning for her. His shields were still strong, but she had fired 30 rounds. 30 pieces of data about how those shields worked. Time to use that data. She aimed carefully at a joint in his shoulder armor where the shields flickered weakest. 3-round burst. The rounds hit in the same spot. The shields held but flickered more noticeably. Vash spun, raising his lance. Hana was already moving, dropping back to ground level. You cannot hide forever. Vash shouted. He fired wildly, plasma bolts turning rubble into slag, but Hana was not hiding. She was hunting. There was a difference. She circled around, coming at Vash from behind. Her rifle came up. 5 shots, all targeting the same joint. The shields flickered, stuttered, and for just a moment, failed. The 6th round went through. Not deep, just a graze against his armor, but proof. The shields had limits. They could be overwhelmed with sustained fire at weak points. Vash roared and spun. His lance came around in a wide arc. Hana dropped flat. The superheated blade passed over her head. She rolled, came up inside his guard, and for the first time removed her helmet. The crowd gasped. The sound of thousands of beings going silent all at once. On the holographic displays throughout the arena, Hana's face appeared in close detail. Young, female, human, and covered with scars. Burns crossed her left cheek. A blade scar along her jaw. Tissue regeneration marks on her neck. Acid damage on her temple. Her eyes, pale and calm, looked up at Vash. They were veteran eyes. Eyes that had seen too much death and kept moving anyway. You wanted to see Earth's warrior, Hana said softly. Her voice carried through the arena's audio systems. You wanted proof. Here is your proof. She moved before Vash could react. Not away, but toward him. Inside his reach. Her rifle came up, and she fired continuously. Every round aimed at the weak points in his shields. his knee joint, his elbow, his neck seal. The shields flickered under the sustained kinetic barrage. Vosh swung his lance, but Hana was already too close. The weapon was designed for range. In close quarters, it was unwieldy. She ducked under his arm, grabbed his wrist, and used his own momentum against him. A human combat technique taught in every military basic training. Use the enemy's strength as a weapon. Vosh stumbled. Impossible. How could something so small move something so large? But physics did not care about impossible. Leverage worked regardless of size. Hana kept moving. Her rifle empty now. She dropped it and drew her sidearm. Close quarters weapon for close quarters work. She fired at his shields, overwhelming them through sustained fire. The energy barriers flickered, failed, restarted, failed again. Technology could only do so much. Vosh tried to create distance, but Hana would not let him. She stayed inside his guard, moving constantly. Every time he tried to bring his lance to bear, she redirected it, used his weapon against him, tangled it in rubble, made his strength a liability. The crowd was silent now, watching in disbelief. This was not how it was supposed to go. The primitive human was supposed to fall in seconds. Instead, she was dismantling a champion piece by piece. Hana saw her opening. Vosh overextended, trying to grab her. She stepped into his grab, caught his arm, and used a joint lock. Basic hand-to-hand combat. The kind soldiers learned in training and forgot in favor of technology. But basics worked. Always worked. Vosh went down to one knee. The plasma lance fell from his grip. Hana kicked it away and pressed her sidearm to his helmet visor. Her breathing was heavy but controlled. Her face was expressionless. "Yield," she said quietly. Just one word. Not a request. A statement. Vosh stared up at her. Behind his visor, his yellow eyes were wide, shocked. For the first time in 43 matches, he was defeated. By a human. By someone a third his size. By someone whose armor looked like scrap. "I yield," Vosh said. The arena remained silent for another heartbeat. Then the announcer's voice, uncertain, declared, "Victory to Lieutenant Hana Kim of Earth." Hana lowered her weapon and stepped back. She extended a hand to Vosh, a human gesture. "Help your enemy up. Respect the warrior even if you defeat them." Vosh stared at her hand for a moment, then took it. She helped pull him to his feet. Even that small gesture spoke volumes. She had the strength to help move his massive frame. "What happened at Gyeongsan 7? Vosh asked quietly. His voice was no longer mocking. It was the voice of one warrior to another. Respect earned through combat. Hana picked up her helmet and looked at the thousands of watching beings. At the cameras broadcasting across the galaxy. At the warriors who had mocked her yesterday. "Come to the briefing hall," she said. "All of you. I will tell you what humanity has faced. I will show you why you do not laugh at the scars. Because each one is a story of survival. And humanity has many stories to tell." 3 hours after the arena match, every military representative at the summit gathered in the main briefing hall. The room was designed to hold 1,000 beings, and tonight it was full. Warriors from hundreds of species filled the seats, the floor, even the spaces along the walls. Word had spread quickly. The human who defeated Commander Vosh was going to speak. They wanted to hear what she had to say. Hana stood at the front of the hall next to a holographic display system. She had cleaned up, but still wore her combat armor. The scars on her face were visible to everyone. Tiemann stood nearby, operating the controls for the presentation. His hands shook slightly as he prepared the files. He had seen the footage. He knew what was about to be shown. The hall gradually quieted. Commander Vosh sat in the front row, his damaged armor repaired, but his pride still wounded. Next to him sat Sentinel Cree of the Talmer, an ancient species known for strategic genius. Kree's three eyes focused on Hana, with an intensity that made even experienced warriors uncomfortable. Hana waited until complete silence fell. Then she spoke, her voice calm and clear through the hall's audio system. "You asked about my scars," she began. "You laughed at my armor. You called humanity primitive. Tonight, I will show you what those words mean. I will show you what humanity has faced. And after you see this, you'll understand why we fight the way we do." She nodded to Teeman. The holographic display activated, filling the air above her with a three-dimensional image. A planet appeared, blue and green and beautiful. Cities dotted the surface. Ships moved in orbit. It looked peaceful. "This is Gyeongsan 7, Hana said. "A colony world. Population, 340,000. Humans mostly, but also members of 12 other species who chose to live with us. It was a good place. Farms, schools, families. We had been there for 20 years. Long enough to feel like home." The image shifted. The peaceful scene darkened. Massive shapes appeared at the edge of the system. Ships, but not like any ships the assembled warriors recognized. They looked organic, grown instead of built, flesh and chitin instead of metal. "These are Droth bioships," Hana continued. "What you are seeing happened 14 months ago. This was a vanguard fleet. 3 capital ships, 20 support vessels, and carrier craft for their ground forces. They entered the system without warning. The hologram showed the battle. Gyeongsan 7's orbital defenses opened fire. Kinetic railguns, missile batteries, energy weapons. Everything they had. The Droth ships absorbed the damage and kept coming. When they returned fire, their weapons were biological. Acid sprays that ate through hulls. Projectile organisms that burrowed into ships and consumed them from inside. Spore clouds that disabled electronic systems. The orbital defense platforms fell in 3 hours, Hana said flatly. The Droth ships moved into low orbit and began landing ground forces. This is when we saw them for the first time. The hologram zoomed in on the surface. Drop pods rained down, but they were not metal containers. They were living things, pulsing and organic. When they hit the ground, they burst open. What emerged made several warriors in the audience shift uncomfortably. Droth combat forms stood 2 meters tall on 4 legs. Their bodies were covered in natural armor plating. They had 6 arms, each ending in different biological weapons: claws, acid sacs, bone spikes. They moved with horrible speed and purpose. "The Droth are not like other species you have fought," Hana explained. "They do not negotiate. They do not retreat. They consume everything, entire civilizations. They land on a planet, kill everything that resists, and convert the survivors into more Droth. This is what they do. This is all they do." The hologram showed the first contact. Colonial defense forces opened fire. Energy weapons hit the combat forms and burned flesh, but the creatures adapted quickly. By the second wave, the same weapons were less effective. The Droth learned, evolved in real time. The colonial government ordered a full evacuation, Hana continued. We had 6 days before the main Droth fleet arrived. 6 days to get 340,000 people off-world. The problem was, we only had 4 major spaceports. The Droth knew this. They targeted those ports immediately. The hologram focused on one spaceport, the largest. Ships were landing, loading civilians, taking off. A continuous cycle. And surrounding the port, defending it, was a thin line of soldiers. "This is the 7th Colonial Marines," Hana said quietly. My unit, 200 soldiers. Our orders were simple. Hold the port until every civilian was evacuated. We were told it would take 6 days. We said we could do it. The hologram showed the first day. Drath combat forms attacked in waves. The Marines fired with everything they had. Kinetic weapons, plasma rifles, grenades, missiles. Bodies piled up. Drath bodies. But also human bodies. Hana let the hologram play without commentary. The assembled warriors watched in silence as day turned to night and the fighting continued. Medical teams dragged wounded soldiers away. Ammunition supplies dwindled. The defensive perimeter shrank. Day 1 casualties, 50 soldiers, Hana said. Day 2, 40 more. The Drath kept learning. They started avoiding our strongest defensive positions, probing for weaknesses. By day 3, we realized something important. Energy weapons were becoming less effective. The Drath were adapting to them too quickly. The hologram showed Marines switching weapons, discarding advanced plasma rifles for older kinetic weapons. Slug throwers, bullets, ancient technology by galactic standards. This is when we learned something about being human, Hana said. We are adaptable. When the advanced weapons stopped working, we used simple weapons. When simple weapons ran out, we used explosives. When explosives ran out, we used fire. When fire ran out, we used our hands. The hologram showed close combat. Marines fighting Drath forms hand to hand, using combat knives, using rocks, using broken pieces of equipment as clubs. It was brutal, primitive, and effective. By day 4, we had 60 soldiers left. Hana's voice remained steady, but everyone could hear the weight behind the words. The Drath sent everything they had. They knew we were the last thing standing between them and the evacuation ships. This is when I received most of my scars. The hologram zoomed in on a younger Hana. Her armor was pristine then. She was firing a rifle, directing troops, helping wounded soldiers to cover. Then a Drath form broke through the line. It was different from the others, larger, faster. It carried biological weapons that sprayed concentrated acid. The assembled warriors watched as the acid hit Hana's helmet, ate through the visor, splashed across her face. She screamed and fell. The audio was clear, painfully clear. But even as she fell, she was bringing up her sidearm, firing, putting rounds through the Drath form's head until it stopped moving. Hana touched her face, tracing the burn scars. Day 5. 20 soldiers left. We pulled back to the final defense line, right at the loading ramps. Ships were still coming, still loading civilians. Thousands of people, children, families, people who just wanted to live. The hologram showed night fighting, illumination flares turning everything into harsh shadows. The Marines were exhausted, wounded, running on stimulants and desperation. But they held the line. Day 6, Hana said softly. 4 of us left. Private Minji Cho, Sergeant Dong-Yoon Lee, Corporal Subin Kwan, and me. The last evacuation ship was loading. 3,000 civilians. We stood at the loading ramp. The hologram showed 4 soldiers in battered armor, standing together. Behind them, civilians rushed up the ramp. In front of them, thousands of Drath combat forms gathered for a final assault. We had maybe 200 rounds of ammunition between us, Hana said. Not enough. Not nearly enough. But we stood there anyway, because those 3,000 people were counting on us. Because someone had to hold the line. Because if we ran, everyone would die. The hologram showed the final assault. The Drath came in a wave, a living tsunami of claws and teeth and biological weapons. The 4 soldiers opened fire. controlled bursts, making every round count. Bodies fell. Drath forms climbed over their own dead to reach the Marines. Minji died first. Hannah's voice cracked slightly. Acid spray went right through her chest plate. She kept firing until she fell. Dong Yun lasted another minute. They swarmed him, just buried him under bodies. Subin held the left side of the ramp. Hana stopped, breathed, continued. A draft flyer grabbed her, pulled her off the ramp. I never saw her again. The hologram zoomed in on Hana, alone now, standing at the bottom of the loading ramp. The ship was lifting off behind her, draft forms climbing toward her. She was out of ammunition. The rifle dropped, the sidearm empty. She drew her combat knife. The warriors in the briefing hall watched in absolute silence as Hana fought. Knife work, hand-to-hand combat, punching, kicking, biting when necessary. The draft kept coming. She kept fighting. Blood covered her armor. Some was hers. Most was not. I do not remember most of this, Hana admitted. I remember bits and pieces. The ship was lifting off. I was holding on to the ramp. Drath were climbing up after the ship. If they reached the hull, they would breach it. 3,000 people would die. So I did not let go. The hologram showed her hanging onto the ramp with one hand, knife in the other, cutting at drath forms as they climbed toward her. The ship was 50 meters off the ground. 100 meters. 200. Still she held on. I blacked out somewhere around 300 meters, Hana said. The ship made orbit. Made the jump to FTL. Rescue teams found me 6 days later when reinforcements arrived. I was in a medical coma for 2 weeks. When I woke up, they told me 3 things. She paused and looked around the hall. Every eye was on her. 1. All 340,000 civilians were successfully evacuated. Every single one. 2. The 7th Colonial Marines was dissolved. I was the only survivor. 3. Earth wanted to give me a medal and a discharge. Hana smiled, but it was not a happy expression. I took the medal. I refused the discharge, because the Drath are still out there, still consuming worlds, still killing, and someone needs to fight them. The hologram faded. The lights in the briefing hall came back up slowly. No one spoke. No one moved. They were processing what they had seen. A single human holding a loading ramp against thousands of enemies, fighting with her hands when weapons failed, refusing to let go even when falling meant death. Finally, Sentinel Kree stood. The ancient Talmer's 3 eyes gleamed in the light. You held a starport for 6 days. You stood alone at the end. Yes, Hana said simply. Your species has faced the Drath and survived. We believe them unstoppable. Nothing is unstoppable, Hana replied. The Drath are just another enemy. Stronger than most. More adaptable than most. But they can be killed. I know. I killed hundreds of them. Kree's mandibles clicked in what might have been respect. What do humans call this kind of warfare? Hannah's expression did not change. We call it Tuesday. The briefing hall remained silent for a long moment after the hologram faded. Then, slowly, Commander Vosh stood. His massive frame towered over most of the assembled beings, but when he looked at Hana, there was no mockery in his yellow eyes anymore. Only respect. Lieutenant Kim, Vosh said formally. I looked at your armor yesterday and thought you weak. I should have looked at your scars and known you were tested by fire. I apologize for my words. Hana nodded once. Apology accepted, Commander. You tested me today. Now you know what humanity can do. Other warriors began standing, one by one, then in groups. Soon the entire hall was on its feet, not applauding. Warriors did not applaud other warriors, but standing in acknowledgement, in respect. The human had proven herself through combat and through survival. She had earned her place among them. Sentinel Cree moved forward, floating on invisible currents of thought. The Talmer's ancient voice carried clearly through the hall. The Talmer Collective wishes to open alliance discussions with Earth, immediately. A Kel commander clicked forward on multiple legs. The Hive worlds also seek alliance. We misjudged humanity. This will not happen again. More voices joined in. The Vralthi, the Nyx, the Kelborn tribes, species that had log. Head at Earth's representative yesterday were now requesting formal meetings. Teeman stood near the display controls, his data tablet chiming constantly with incoming diplomatic requests. His face showed shock and joy in equal measure. Hana remained still, watching the transformation. From mockery to respect. From isolation to alliance. This was what Earth needed. What humanity's colonies needed to survive. But she also knew this was just the beginning. There is more you need to understand, Hana said, raising her voice to cut through the noise. The hall quieted again. What I showed you was one battle, one colony, one unit of soldiers. But this is happening across human space. The Drath are not just attacking Gongsen 7. They are pushing into the outer systems. 3 more colonies have gone silent in the past month. The gravity of her words settled over the assembled warriors. This was not just about one human survival story. This was about an existential threat to multiple civilizations. A Nyx representative floated forward. Our intelligence reports show the Drath have conquered 47 civilizations in the past century. All possessed superior technology to humanity. All fell within weeks of Drath invasion. The translated voice was analytical, showing no emotion. Why did Gongsun 7 survive for 6 days? Why did you succeed where others failed? Hana considered the question carefully. It was important. The answer would define how other species viewed humanity, how they understood what humans could bring to a military alliance. Technology is a tool, Hana said slowly. A good tool makes fighting easier. Better weapons kill more efficiently. Stronger armor protects better. But tools break. Shields fail. Weapons run out of ammunition. What happens then? She gestured to her scarred armor. When my plasma rifle overheated and broke on day 3, I switched to kinetic weapons. When those ran out, I used grenades. When grenades ran out, I used my knife. When the knife broke, I used my hands. The Drath never stopped adapting to our tools, but they could not adapt to our refusal to quit. Sentinel Cree made a sound like wind through crystals. Determination. This is your advantage. Not just determination, Hana corrected. Understanding what we fight for. Every human who evacuated from Gongsan 7 was someone's family, someone's friend, someone who mattered. When you fight for people you know, people you love, you do not give up. You cannot give up, because giving up means they die. She looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of warriors from 100 different species. You have advanced technology, better shields, stronger weapons, faster ships. But when that technology fails, what do you have left? Humans have learned to fight with whatever works. Sticks and stones if necessary. Because in the end, the weapon does not win the fight. The warrior does. Commander Vosh stepped forward. You must train us. Teach us these techniques. This philosophy of fighting. That is why I am here, Hana replied. Earth is offering more than an alliance. We are offering to share everything we have learned. Our tactics, our training methods, our understanding of the Drath. In exchange, we need your support. your fleets, your resources. Together, we can stop the Drath advance. Teeman moved beside her, his diplomatic training taking over. Earth's government has authorized me to negotiate formal military alliances with any species present. We are also proposing a joint task force. Human soldiers working alongside warriors from your civilizations, learning from each other, fighting together. The hall erupted into discussion. Warriors talked with their delegations. Data tablets chimed with messages sent to home worlds. The political machinery of a dozen civilizations began moving. What had seemed impossible yesterday was now happening. Earth, the newcomer species, was suddenly at the center of military planning for multiple civilizations. Hana stepped back and let Teeman work. This was his area of expertise: diplomacy, negotiation, alliance building. Her job was done. She had proven humanity's worth through combat. Now others would build on that foundation. A young voice called out from the crowd, "Lieutenant Kim." Hana turned to see Corporal Jiho Nam pushing through the assembled warriors. The young technician she had met 2 days ago. He looked excited and slightly overwhelmed. "I watched the arena match," Jiho said breathlessly. "And just now, the hologram. I had no idea. No one told us what really happened on Gongsun 7. They just said it was a successful evacuation." "It was successful," Hana said quietly. 340,000 people lived. That is what matters. But the 7th Colonial Marines, your unit, they. Jiho struggled for words. They were heroes. Hana's expression softened slightly. They were soldiers, doing their job, holding the line so others could live. That is what soldiers do. "Will you really train the other species?" Jiho asked. "Teach them human combat techniques?" "Yes," Hana confirmed. "Starting tomorrow. Earth Command is promoting me to Major and assigning me to lead a joint training program. We will prepare as many warriors as possible before the Drath's next major offensive. Can I help?" Jiho asked eagerly. "I am just a technician, but I know our equipment. I could assist with maintenance, logistics, whatever you need." Hana studied him for a moment. Young, enthusiastic, untested, but everyone started somewhere. She had been young once too. Before Gongsun 7, before the scars. "Report to me tomorrow morning," Hana said. 0600 station time. Be ready to work. Jiho's face broke into a wide smile. "Yes, Major, I will be there." As Jiho disappeared back into the crowd, Commander Vosh approached again. The massive Vralthi looked uncomfortable, which was unusual for a warrior of his reputation. "Major Kim," Vosh said formally, using her new rank. "I wish to request something." "Speak," Hana replied. "I want to train under you personally. Learn your human techniques. Understand how you fight." Vosh's mandibles clicked nervously. "You defeated me in the arena, not through superior technology, through superior skill and tactics. I have won 43 consecutive matches by relying on my equipment and my strength. You showed me that is not enough." Hana considered this carefully. Vosh was a proud warrior. Asking for training was difficult for him. It meant admitting his limitations. That took strength of a different kind. "Tomorrow," Hana said. 0600. Training Hall B. Bring your armor and weapons. Leave your pride behind. I do not care about your reputation or your rank. In training, you are a student. Can you accept that?" Vosh straightened his massive frame. "I can. I will learn what you have to teach." "Good," Hana said simply. First lesson: fighting is not about being the strongest or having the best equipment. It is about being the one still standing when everything goes wrong. I will teach you how to be that person. The next few hours were a blur of diplomatic meetings. Teeman negotiated terms with a dozen species. Alliance agreements, technology sharing, joint training programs, resource allocation. Earth was no longer begging for allies. They were being courted by civilizations that had existed for thousands of years. Later that night, after the last meeting ended, Hana stood alone on the observation deck of Galactic Citadel Station. Through the transparent walls, stars stretched forever in all directions. Somewhere out there, the Drath were gathering, preparing their next assault. More colonies would be attacked. More soldiers would fight and die. But now, humanity would not fight alone. Teeman found her there, 2 cups of tea in his hands. He offered one to Hana, and they stood in comfortable silence for a moment. "You did it," Teeman said finally. "Every major military power wants alliance with Earth now. We have gone from isolated newcomers to essential allies in 2 days." "It is not over," Hana replied. "The Drath are still coming. Alliance agreements are just words until tested in real combat. But we have a chance now. Before, Earth's colonies were defenseless. Now we have allies, resources, time to prepare." Hana sipped her tea, thinking about Gyeongsen 7, about Minji Dongyun, and Subin, about 200 soldiers who held a line so others could live. The 7th Colonial Marines held for 6 days against impossible odds. Now I have to teach an entire galaxy how to do the same thing. How to fight when everything goes wrong. How to keep standing when you should fall. Can you teach that?" Teeman asked. "That kind of determination?" "I have to try," Hana said. She touched the scars on her face. "These used to remind me only of pain, of loss, of friends who died while I lived. But now they remind me of something else. That humans can survive anything if we refuse to give up. That we can face nightmares and walk away. That is what I will teach. Not just tactics or techniques, but the understanding that you do not have to be the strongest to win. You just have to be the one who refuses to quit." Teeman nodded slowly. The Drath invaded Jungsun 7 expecting an easy victory. They were wrong. "And when they come again," Hana said quietly, "they will expect the same thing. A quick conquest. Easy prey." She smiled then, a warrior's smile, scarred but unbroken. "They will be wrong again. Because now the galaxy knows what humanity can do. What we will do. We will stand in the gap. Hold the line. Fight with whatever works. And we will never, ever surrender." She raised her teacup in a silent toast. To fallen friends. To future battles. To the scars that proved survival was possible. The Drath laughed when they saw Gyeongsen 7's defenses. Hana said, "Primitive kinetic weapons. Simple metal armor. Humans with their basic technology. They thought it would be easy.